Today, we are going to talk about aligning your message to what you do best relative to what's needed most. Then we're going to talk about maintaining your focus to create real differentiation. And finally, we're going to talk about creating emotional connections with your supporters. So hope that all works for you folks. And like she said, we're happy to talk afterwards. So let's start with aligning your message to what you do best and is needed most. So a little story. When I was in high school, I was pretty active. I was involved in Spanish club, the newspaper, thespians, jazz band, jazz chorus, marching band, National Honor Society, philosophical club, which was a ridiculous name, and student government. I don't say this to brag. The contrary, I say this to say what an idiot I was, because how many of those things do you think I did? I did really well. In fact, my mother once said to me, I kind of feel bad for you. You're good at so many things, but not great at any of them. Thanks. I don't bring that up for pity or for free therapy, but I bring it up just to prove the point that, for the most part, we all take on too much. And when we do that, that impacts the quality of what we do. That was supposed to be an animated GIF with a guy going, same with our organizations. If our organizations take on too much, how much do you think we're actually going to get done well, do with greatness? See, the great thing about people that work and run not-for-profits and social enterprises is that they have this passion to help people. They really want to make a difference. They have this drive. But the bad thing about people, the downside about that, is that they have this need to help people, that they really want to make a difference. They have this drive, which means it's really hard for them to say no when someone comes to them with a problem. But unfortunately, what that happens, that everything they do is not quite as good, and that includes their message. So when you get back to your offices, whether that's virtual or in real life, I want you to go to your website, take a look at your website, and ask yourself these questions about all the content you have, about the programs, the services, the offerings you have. Take a look at them and ask yourself, how many are there? Are they all of equal importance? Do they tell together a clear and compelling story? Now, if I were a betting man, I bet your answers are going to be something like more than 5, not at all, and if I'm being honest, yeah, no, not so much. But hey, that happens. That's the way that happens all the time. How many of you can identify with this comment that we got from a client when they came to us a couple of years ago? Sure, we can write a great grant proposal, but explaining what we do to everybody else, yeah, not so much. That doesn't happen so easily. Well, there's 3 reasons why that happens. First of all, you're trying to do too much. You're not sure what will resonate, so you share everything, and you're too focused on the details to talk about the bigger picture. Now, of course, you're focused on the details because that's what you do. You live and breathe what you do day in and day out. You and your colleagues do that. You have moved on from the big picture. You've moved on from the emotional element, but the problem is nobody else has. So we have to take a minute and step back and remember what we know that nobody else knows. Excuse me. So how do you do that? Well, before we do that, I want to just take a minute to reiterate what a message is all about. So your message is not to, when you try to talk to people that your supporters or your potential supporters or anyone that's important to you, the goal is not to take everything that's in your head and put it in their head like some Vulcan mind melt. The idea, the whole point of a message is to get them excited about what you do, to get them to want to be involved. So you don't want to give them everything right away. You just want to get them enough so that they ask a question of your work. Because once they ask that first question, that's when their involvement begins. So by giving them a little bit of information at a time, it's almost like trying to get a squirrel to eat out of your hand, to put a little bit here and a little bit there and a little bit there. So you want to build up this momentum so people get excited about your work. And too often we think, oh my God, we have to tell everything. We have to explain everything. No, you don't. Let me give you a real life. Oh, sorry. Out of sync. I'm going to be a little out of sync with this new PDF approach. So be kind, be kind. So how to fix it? Well, I believe there are two ways to fix it. First, research, and second, reflect. So in my career, I have worked with so many managers and senior leaders in both not-for-profits and for-profits that do not believe in market research. They think, oh, I don't need that. I know what people are thinking. I know what people want. I know what people need. Denied. They do not. They will not. And my friends, neither do you or your leadership. Let me give you an example. We had a client last year that was horrified to learn that people thought their events were clicky. Now, they never would have found that out had we not done research. That's just one example. And another reason why research is really important is that you've got to remember that communication is a two-way street. It's listening and then sharing, listening, then sharing. If you're just sharing, then all you're doing is bullhorning people. You're just sending information out. Research is that second part of the two-way street. All right, so if we want to use market research to fix these three challenges, trying to do too much, not sure what will resonate, making certain we're not focused on the details and the bigger picture, we use research to determine where is our greatness lies. Where do we really do best? What do people really need us to do? We use research to get a sense of what's important to people. What do they care about? How do they feel about something? Why is it important to them? And we'll talk about that in the third section of this presentation. And then how you've got to figure out, what do they know? What don't they know? What do they want to know? And what do we want them to know? And you use research to figure those out. Now, research doesn't have to be a very expensive or exhaustive process. You can hire a firm, and I highly recommend that. But you can also do it yourself. And I'm a firm believer that DIY is way better than nothing at all. And it's that important. So you can do a simple survey, or you can conduct some informal focus groups and listening sessions. So if you want to do a survey, here are some suggestions. You can use any kind of, it's really easy to do. There's so many services out there. There's Google Forms, SurveyMonkey. There's a host of Typeform. There's a host of them out there that you can use one of them. My recommendations would be a couple. First of all, keep it short. Keep it short and simple. Don't ask questions unless you specifically want to act on that data. No one has an attention span anymore. Nobody wants to take a long survey, and guess what? Nobody will. And also, if you're not a market research expert, the more questions you have, the harder it's going to be to paint a clear picture of what you're learning. So keep it simple. Now, one structure that I like to encourage folks to use is the whole reporter's approach of who, what, when, where, why, and how. And let's take a look at that. So ask questions about who are the people that you are reaching. What are their ages? What are their gender identities? What are their titles? What are their priorities? What's really important to them? When are they most likely to think about your organization, and when are they most likely to support it? Where are they in the community? Where are they in their journey towards joining you in your work? Why do they care about what you do? And again, we'll talk about this in a bit. And how can you be of most help to them, or how do they envision themselves being a part of your work? Now, once you've got the survey ready, I'd recommend sending it out to everyone on your distribution list and adding it to all your social media channels. Try to get out there as much as possible. I wouldn't worry about anyone taking the survey more than once, because who would do that? And it's just not going to happen enough to change the data. So I would try to distribute as much as possible. And always remember to put a finish by date. Please finish this by da 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 da. Now, if you don't want to or can't do a survey, then you can also do listening sessions or focus groups. Now, I would encourage you hiring a third party to help you out with this for a couple of reasons. First of all, it helps with candor. People will feel a lot more comfortable talking in front of someone that's not directly associated with the organization than they will in front of you or your colleagues. but also it helps to discourage groupthink, where one person has an idea and then somebody else agrees, and then everybody else thinks they have to agree with them. So if you can find someone to help you out with that, that would be helpful. Now, the next thing to do is once you get that data back, I encourage you to sit down with your leadership and really have a heart-to-heart conversation and a real think about what it is you do. What is it you really do at the most fundamental level? How do you do that better and differently than anybody else? And we'll talk a little bit more on that in a second. But really, what is it you do on a most fundamental level? Now, let me give you an example of an organization we worked with a couple of years ago called Leading Cities. Now, before we worked with them, Leading Cities used to say they were, and I'm going to have to read this because as you'll see, it does not roll off the tongue. Leading Cities, an international nonprofit organization, is a global leader in smart city solutions, city diplomacy, and collaboration, advancing sustainability, resilient city strategies and technologies to improve the quality of life in cities around the world. Shocking, I couldn't memorize that. When we worked with them, we came up with, and here's where the presentation would have been much better had we been able to use Keynote. So we came up with their this first line is what they do at the most fundamental level. And that is leading cities connect cities across the globe with innovations that solve our most pressing challenges. We do that by, and then here are the hows. This is how they do it in a way that's relevant and competitively differentiated from all the other options their supporters have. We do that by cultivating a global network of forward thinkers from the public, private, and academic and nonprofit sectors. We do that by nurturing and supporting the most promising startups and connecting them with cities ready to benefit from their work. And we do that by delivering advanced research, emerging trends, and technologies through consulting services and global experts. Now, here is where they also use this to guide how they talk about their information in terms of, say, their website navigation. So now they have 3 buckets. Instead of listing out everything as if they're equal, they have 3 main buckets that reinforce what they do at the most fundamental level. And then underneath that, that's where they have all their programs. Leading Cities Member Network, Acela City and Acela Gov, Leading Consulting. Now, when I asked earlier on how many different services you have, if you have more than 5, and especially if they don't work together to tell a clear story, you've got too many. And I would really encourage you to think about how can you bucket them as proof points to how you do your most fundamental contribution. And again, in this case, it's connecting cities across the globe with innovations that solve our most pressing challenges. Now, that all comes together conversationally too. So if somebody says, what does Leading Cities do? You can say, well, thank you for asking. Leading Cities connect cities across the globe with innovations that solve our most pressing challenges. We do that by cultivating a global network of forward thinkers, nurturing and supporting our most promising startups, and delivering advanced research and emerging trends with global experts. Much easier than what they had before. So let's talk about maintaining focus and creating real differentiation. I want to talk a little bit about focus, though. And here's where that what and how structure I just showed you, it's kind of a superpower that gives you focus. Let me give you an example. So let's say that someone comes to Leading Cities with an idea. Oh my gosh, we should do a corporate adopt a city program like they do for highways. Yeah, okay. Well, the executive director could say, well, no, that's stupid. Or they could say, well, let's see, how does that align with our hows, how we do what we do? Does that cultivate a global network of forward thinkers? No, not so much. Does it nurture and support our most promising startups? No, doesn't do that. Does it deliver advanced research, emerging trends, and technologies through consulting services? Denied. So that means that the verdict is that is not a good idea for Leading Cities. Now, granted, this might be a slightly ridiculous example, but it is one that I hope proves the point that focus is really important, not only in your message, but how you conduct and stay where you want to stay focused on what you want to do and where you want to go. I mean, it happens all the time. So, we decide this is who we are as an organization, but then we see something else that we need to address. And then we see something else that we need to address. And that's okay. And we see something else we need to address, but our message is still pointing in this direction while we're pointing in that direction. So it's a real important challenge to stay focused. So what is the point? So the point of any message, sorry, I need a little cue there. The point of any message is to connect with your supporters in a way that they can't support with anybody else. You want to be able to explain to them why what you do, and more specifically, the way you do it is important. You've got to be competitively differentiated. Ooh, that sounds so corporate. Ugh, I feel dirty. Well, if that's the way you feel, I have some news for you. You're dirty. Of course, not-for-profits have competitors. You're competing for grantors, you're competing for donors, you're competing for volunteers, you're competing for talent. And everybody has lots of options to do with their time, talent, and treasures. And you've got to make the case for why you are worthy of their time, talent, and treasures. But the other great thing about doing this work is that it makes you less like these guys, and it lets you look in the mirror and feel comfortable about what you do, because you're talking to your audience in an authentic way, in a true, authentic way that is legitimate and purposeful. And it makes you feel a lot less guilty about going after the money that the guy in the next Zoom window is going after. So I want you to look at some of these words here: help, empower, meet the needs, with your support, care for. So these are the same words that we use all the time. And because everybody uses them over and over again, they lose their meaning. So when I see the word empower, I might assume that, well, that's the same way they're using empower, the same way the daycare center down the street is using it. Or when I see the word help, I think of, well, honestly, I think of the Beatles, help me if you can, I'm feeling down. Okay, it's been a long time since I've been in chorus. But and parenthetically, if you haven't heard Tina Turner's cover of that, I highly recommend it. But I digress. And then there's things like cares. You know, I can think of as the soap opera stars that get up and implore us to learn CPR. Why? Because CBS cares. Yeah. Now, it's easy for me to take pot shots at the words we've been using forever, but that's the whole point. We've been using these words forever. So I have a challenge for you. Every time when you go back to work and one of your colleagues is talking about your work in a way that uses language just like everybody else's, I want you to quack like a duck. Quack. Because if it sounds like a duck and it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck, chances are it's a duck. So if you're not a duck, don't quack like one. Meaning, if you're not like everybody else, don't sound like one. Now, if we were live in person, we would do this all interactively together, and I would say something. I would get the entire audience to go quack, 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 and it would be hilarious, but that would be ridiculous to do now. So we're going to move on. So how do you fix this? All right, well, two ways: research and create your own vocabulary. So let me talk about what I mean. So when you write messaging, it is to position yourself relative to your competition, relative to all the other options people have with their time, talent, and treasures. So we recommend doing what we call a messaging audit. Take a look at five organizations that are going after the same kind of dollars you are, the same kind of legislative support. It is as much like you as possible. Take a look at their websites and their content or their brochures, if those are still a thing, and look at them on these five levels. Positioning. How do they describe the organization? What do they say it does? What kind of organization do they say they are? Who are they talking to? What is being said to this particular audience, and what is it they want? What's the overall clarity on a scale from 1 to 5, with 5 being that is crystal clear and 1 being I don't know. What is the clarity of their overall message? What is their call to action? Are they asking people to donate right away? Are they asking people to get involved, to call the legislator? Are they asking people just to reach out? What are they asking and how? And what is their tone of voice? Are they optimistic and supercharged and, yo, we can do this? Or are they very serious and this is something that needs to happen right away? Or are they somewhere in between? And then take a look at your own content and decide not only where is it now, but more importantly, where do you want to be? What kind of positioning do you want to have? What kind of audience are you talking to? What are your calls to action? What kind of tone of voice do you want to use? And then finally, of course, figure out how clear is it to someone that doesn't know your work inside and out, someone that's not in your head. Now, it's really easy to do. It takes some hours, but if you don't want to do it, that is also something we do. And we're raffling away a free audit of your organization and up to five comparable ones. We usually charge $1,500 for that, but we're going to give one away at the end of this conference. Go to our, give me one second, go to our trade show booth, and I think that's and you can enter the raffle there. And then we'll also make it available at half price for anybody who wants it at the end of the year. Okay, bye. Okay, the next thing I want to encourage you to do is think about the vocabulary that you use. Think about the words that you use. Now, I need to find my notes here. Just a quick second. Okay. So if you're ever in an Apple store, you can tell that they've got a different vibe there, right? People are pretty happy, and especially those that are working there. And a lot of that comes from the fact that they are they have a very specific way that they're encouraged and taught to speak. Starts at orientation, and apparently they have this acronym called APPLE, which stands for Approach Customers with a Personalized, Warm Welcome, Probe politely to understand all the customer's needs, present a solution for the customer to take home today, listen for and resolve any issues or concerns, and end with a fond farewell and an invitation to return. Now, there's some words they're not allowed to say. They're not allowed to say, unfortunately. They're not allowed to say bug or that's a problem. Everything's about a solution. And again, it seems to be working because those stores are already packed and people that work there seem pretty happy. So I encourage you to find your own vocabulary. And here are just some high level, kind of superfluous examples. Instead of using help all the time, use bolster or alter the path instead of making a difference, or fortify instead of support. Let me give you some examples of work that we did with an organization. So we worked with the Harvard Medical School's Center for Primary Care a couple of years ago. And one of the ways we worked with them is we helped them with really talking about why their work matters. And we came up with promote and fight for primary care that improves the quality of life for people around the world. Now, when we had this discussion, it was back when you could actually sit around a table with people. We were there with the senior leadership, including the executive director. And the executive director said, the word fight makes me very uncomfortable. And everybody turned and looked, and he said, and that's probably a good thing. I think that's what we need. So here's some other language that we helped them with and that really helped change how they think about themselves, how they talk about themselves, and how they connect with themselves, connect with those most important to their success. Restore, giving primary care teams the skills to work more efficiently, connect, nurture, and expansive a global engaged network. Demonstrate, using a research in a formidable network. That was a word that was really outside their vernacular. And lead. They had to come from a point of academic research, but now they realized that they needed to be an organization that was out there leading. And then fearless. We will not be deterred in our efforts to use research, experience, education, community to bring about necessary change. We are steadfast in our unwavering commitment. We relish our role as collaborators, and creativity, resourcefulness, and innovation are must-haves. Now, when's the last time you heard a primary care physician talk about creativity? Probably not very often. So it's really these changing the language really also help them change who they are themselves. So now I want to talk to you about trying to feel an emotional connection with your folks. Now, this would have been hilarious if I could have done it the way I wanted to, because it was an animated GIF and the words so whatever, and it would have made a much stronger point. But I'll try to do it on my own. So why? You might think that, well, it's obvious why our work is important. We help save the environment. So We help populations at risk. So we fix poverty, or we stop the cycle of poverty. Well, so it's way more important than that. I'm not being a jerk. I'm not trying to be insensitive. I'm just trying to push you a little bit further. So you save the environment. People want to hear that you're saving the environment because their hearts might ache when they see people displaced, because they left a life in the city and they love being able to go to parks, and they want everyone to do that, because they're afraid of the legacy that they're creating for their grandchildren. Because that Greta Thunberg girl has scared the bejesus out of them, and they want to do something. And what about advanced medical, or getting care for people at risk populations? Maybe they've had a child and their heart breaks at the thought of somebody else's child having to go through that. Stop the cycles of poverty. Well, maybe they just want to feel good about themselves. Maybe they just don't want to feel guilty about making gazillions of dollars. And hey, that's a reality. And so you've got to understand what it is that they're feeling. And that's how you make your message important. Now, as human beings, we make decisions two ways: with analytics and with emotion. Now, here's a little secret. It's usually the emotion that are making the decisions. We just use the analytical drivers to support the emotional decisions. Here's a simple example. I need a car to get to work. Well, I don't, because I live in the city and work from home. But in theory, I need a car to get to work. But other people might really want to make an impression on someone, that they've worked really hard and they've earned this ridiculous car, or that they identify with a particular type of car, or a group of people that buy this car, or maybe their grandfather was a big fan of Cadillacs. I don't know. The point is, there's an emotional driver that they justify with the analytical driver of needing to get to work. Oh man, this is going to be tough. All right, give me 1 second. I'm going to make this work. Actually, I'm not, because I think we're running out of time. This is a video that I really want all of you to go to at some point. Not now, because I'm not done talking. But
I'll see if I can drop it into the chat. I'm sorry.
Thank you. That's a great idea. It's a great video, because if you think that you have trouble connecting with people on an emotional level, I want you to watch this video, because it's about something that no one ever would have thought to apply an emotional feeling to. And I've seen it dozens of times, and it still gives me goosebumps. So I want you to watch that for inspiration, and know that if they can do it about elevators, you can do it about what you do. So there's lots of ways to do this. And you've got to go beyond. You've got to go beyond just what it is you do. We can help everyone nourish their bodies, their minds, and their future. Children should be able to run and play, not run and hide from abusers. Protecting our lands creates joy in our hearts. You've really got to go down deeper, because again, you might assume that everybody gets the why, that gets the emotional connection, because you've been doing it for so long. But you've really got to dig down deeper and deeper and deeper to find the whys that are going to get people, again, wanting to join you in your work, wanting to help, wanting to learn more, wanting to share your message. So how to fix that? Well, if you've been paying attention, you might not be surprised when the first thing I say here is research. And also, I encourage you to look to your culture. But let's talk about research first. So this isn't the same. This isn't new research. You can use the research that you did in the first section to really drive this. But you can also have listening sessions. But you want to dive into the wants and the needs. You want to look for feelings. You want to look for common themes. Later you can profile this in video or print, but you really want to drive down and learn about what are driving people's wants and needs. What is their get to work, and what is their I want people to be impressed. Find those emotional drivers. Now, next, I want you to look to your culture, and I want you to look to your culture by talking to folks, your colleagues. They've got stories. Lots of people that are involved with your organization have stories. Find these stories. So let me tell you one that someone told me about an organization that they're very fond of. I had just moved to the city for a new job, and I was in between insurance plans. My partner's plan did not cover me, and my new one wasn't in place yet. I was devastated because I needed my HIV medication prescriptions refilled, and they were not cheap. I sat down in the waiting room, and the stress of the move, the new job, being away from my partner, and now the lack of insurance just got to me, and I started to cry. The receptionist apparently saw me, called a nurse to come out, and she sat with me. First, she just listened and held my hand as I cried. Then she helped me navigate the system to find a solution. I will never forget the level of care and compassion they showed me even before I was a patient. So find those stories. And the next way I want you to consider looking at your culture is, if your organization were a personality, how would you describe your organization? But it's important to think about it as a person. You might describe a person as creative, as passionate, as helpful, or elegant. You may not describe them as cloud-based, leverageable, disruptive, although maybe, but that's different context, or blockchain. And the reason those are important is because the descriptions of people evoke emotions. The descriptions of organizations, not so much. So try to find that emotion that is behind what drives your entire culture, your entire organization. Okay, so as we wrap up before the questions and answers, just a quick recap. 3 things I encourage you to think about doing: aligning your message to what you do best and is needed most, and you do that through research and reflection. Maintaining focus and creating real differentiation, and you do that through research and creating your own vocabulary. And then trying to find a real emotional connection with your supporters. You do that through research and through looking to your culture. So one of the things I miss about in-person events is, after this, we can talk, run into you at the buffet, and we can have conversations and we can carry on. So can't do that now. So after this, after you've watched this, or if you're watching this live or taped, want some post-conference goodness, go to message.builders/changemakers. It's a real URL, I promise. And you get some downloads. You can follow up questions for me, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn, which I would very, very much like and welcome. But I also, if I may, want to promote my podcast, Messaging on a Mission. I referenced that before, but we're always looking for guests. We talk to people like you who are on a mission to change something, and we talk to you about how your messaging has helped you do that. So please reach out if you want to be a guest. You can find out more about that at messaging.show.